head. I don't get this whole Zoom thing.
Thanks for being here, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to work this out. Got a wide variety of music and subjects we're going to be talking about.
I should go ahead and pour myself one then.
You're not vanilla.
Let me tell you another story, Darren. Andy Dufresne.
Transform.
There's nothing like funk.
There is nothing like it, man. When it's legit, you know what I mean, and it comes from the place where you know it's authentic and originates from. That's all the artists that started it are the ones that inspire me.
Thanks for being here, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to work this out. You're a busy man.
You too.
Yeah. A little give and take, and here we are doing an interview over the internet. That's cool.
Absolutely.
So thanks for taking the time, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun. Everybody out there, got a wide variety of music and subjects we're going to be talking about, and you heard us open the show there with one of Frank's most famous pieces called Hell March, which is from a video game called Command and Conquer Red Alert. And if any of you are avid video game addicts, you'll recognize that piece. And so we're going to have a lot of fun diving into asking Frank about how he composes, how he comes up with these ideas, how he records it. He's sitting there in his studio in Las Vegas right now. And first things first, we got to get to this tonic.
Quench. Inside me. Quench.
So, Frank, what are we drinking today?
Today we're just doing a very simple drink, a little vanilla vodka and soda. It's just it happens just to be one of my favorite drinks. I like alcohol that has some flavor to it, not just like bitter, harshness. And so I like a variety of different drinks in that capacity. But this is one of the most simple ones, and really it's just it's kind of a concept where you can have minimal ingredients and still get your bang for the buck. It still gives you a nice buzz. It still has a nice flavor to it. And it's low on calories. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to watch our figures these days. We used to hang out a lot. That was already 25 years ago. So time is clicking away. But hey, here's to you, man.
Cheers.
This is literally my first vanilla vodka soda.
Okay.
So I'm excited.
All right.
So on Sonic Tonic, it's all about kind of being in the moment and not just rushing off into the next thing. And like we have stuff we want to talk about, music we want to play. And I'm trying to be more mindful and present and going, hey, what is in this and how does it taste and how does it make me feel? And right away, I have to say, this is so curious. There's two ingredients, vodka and club soda.
Yeah.
And the vodka is flavored like vanilla, and it literally tastes exactly like those three things. There's nothing masking it. There's nothing that can be confused.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like an alcohol equivalent to a cream soda in a way, but not as sweet.
That is a very good analogy. Yes, it's an adult cream soda.
Yeah.
Now, living in Vegas, that's known for what's one of the biggest party towns in the world. They have bars open 24 hours a day with every kind of drink you could ever get. How do you end up with liking this as one of your favorite drinks?
Well, it's one of the most common things that is in most bars. Most bars will have vodka, most bars will have club soda, and then if they happen to have flavored vodkas, then cool. Then I'll ask for the vanilla. But if not, then I'll just settle for the regular vodka and maybe put a lime in it just to give it something. But it's most commonly found. A lot of bars in Vegas have their specialties. That's kind of been a trend here. So they have their what they call mixologists, and there's these bartenders that come up with, really clever and creative, concoctions, and, give them their own unique names and, whatever they're going to do. So, and that kind of stuff you can't just get anywhere. So hence, that's why you would want to go to a certain bar, because they offer a very specific, set of drinks, or it's like when you go to a tiki themed bar, for example, and all of the different rum blends they have, in their specialty drinks. You can't just get those anywhere either. So it's the same kind of thing.
But do you, a lot of times this is what you'll order, vanilla vodka soda. That's what you say when you walk up to the bar.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of my go-tos. Yeah.
And then they say, oh, sorry, we don't have any flavored vodkas. And then what do you say?
Well, then I'll either go just a regular vodka soda and add a lime to it, or I'll do a margarita. That's another favorite of mine. But it's got to have Patron in it, man.
Okay, and that's funny because we just featured my sister last week on my birthday, for the Sonic Tonic experience, and one of her favorite things is margaritas, and she makes a killer watermelon margarita.
Oh, nice.
And we used Cabo Wabo in it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's so interesting how all these different subtle mixtures of a recipe can affect the total sum, right? The whole of it really matters, and that's why I kind of started thinking, man, that's really how music works, and especially someone like you who is also not just a drummer, a singer, guitarist, composer, but then you're also a producer and an engineer, and having to think about a little more hi-hat, maybe a little less guitar, where you put it in the spectrum. It's all similar to like a drink, right?
Yeah. And similar to the concept of this drink, where you've got literally two ingredients. There's a band that I really like, more of a modern rock band, in the last decade or so, called Royal Blood. Have you heard of them?
No.
Yeah, they're a really great band, and it's just a bassist and a drummer, and the bassist is also the singer. And he cleverly has come up with a way to run his bass simultaneous through a guitar amp and an octave pedal, so that it sounds like there's an octave guitar over his bass riff at all times. And he uses distortion and cool effects, and so it sounds really full, even though he's only playing a bass line. It just sounds like this big, thick unison riff. And then he's singing really melodically over it and writing clever songs. So literally you're stripping down music to its bare elements, a melody, a bass line, and a rhythm. He's got a drummer. And, and of course he harmonizes with himself and all of that, but he will get a couple of female singers live to play with them when he plays everything live. But it's still just the two of them really at the end of it is the core. And I thought that was such a great and clever use of that set of instruments, just to really have it be that powerful and not feel like it's missing anything.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I was just listening to some Rush last week, and they're the same thing, right? 3-piece band, and it just sounds so huge, and it's so satisfying because they got all, like you said, the basics covered: rhythm, melody, harmony, and it's really neat to be your own person and be a composer and go, oh, well, how am I going to fulfill all of those three categories for a song? So explain to people how the heck you and I met years ago. How do you remember it?
Well, how I remember it was, basically I was friends with Phil Wigfall, mutual friend of ours. Obviously, you were performing with him already at that point.
Sax player.
Fantastic sax player, one of the best. And he told me about this group that he was playing in called Dian, Diaz and the Big Fish. And this was back in, I guess, 95, end of 95 or so.
96, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 96 is when I actually, got on board with you. But I had been watching the band, going to see them since late 95.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really impressed with the band. I thought you guys sounded great, were killer, just, phenomenal musicianship and tunes that were not typical of what, was heard in the, Las Vegas Strip, showroom scene there. And and I talked to the bassist, Walter Jones at the time, and we got to chatting, met for the first time, and he asked for my card. So I gave it to him. And that was the end of that. Well, then I ended up getting a call from you in 1996, saying that, hey, last minute situation has come up. We need a drummer. Not everybody can do this kind of gig because it involves, Latin and funk and jazz and, kind of a hybrid of stuff. And he's like, your name came up. Walter gave me your card. And I was like, oh, okay. So literally you would come down to my place with, all of the material on cassettes and charts, horn charts for me to just kind of glaze over. And I had literally one day to crash 3 sets worth of really difficult material.
Yes.
So, and I had a day job on top of that. So I was literally using every break I had in my day, and then spent most of that night after you left starting to crash everything and just make notes and just prepare as much as I could. And then, so yeah, I show up in the gig, and everybody's looking at me like, who's this new kid behind the kit? And the first song we did was, a tune that had a drum solo in it, of all things. And so I just went for it. And then after the tune was over, I just kind of glanced, and everybody on the stage just went, like, okay, we're going to be all right.
We're going to be fine. That's about how I remember it too. And where was the first gig?
I believe it was the Aladdin.
That's what I was going to say. Yes. So,
but now it's Planet Hollywood. It's changed, but at the time it was the Aladdin.
Yeah. And it was really difficult music, and we were pushing the envelope and doing some kind of wackier covers. Diane was a big fan of Cecilia Noel and the Wild Clams out in LA. Yeah. And I had seen them too a couple years earlier, and so I transcribed those and arranged them for the band, and we were just doing all sorts of cool random things. And 3-piece horn section, 3-piece background female vocal section, 4 rhythm, and then Diane out front just killing it, and it was a really great time. And we were literally playing like 5 and 6 nights a week. We'd be. I
remember
the Aladdin 5 days, and then now we're going to be at Caesars, and then we're going to be at the Rio, and it was a chop buster for all of us.
It was intense. I mean, So I only expected to be, as a substitute, under the, early when I first got called to play with you guys. I just figured I was going to sub for temporarily, but as it turned out, I ended up getting offered the gig, and I was like, oh man, this is going to like kill me, because day job, then 5 nights a week, or 6 nights a week with this band, playing the hard stuff that we're doing. And at the time I took it as a challenge, and I was like, okay, this is fun. This, great group of musicians. I love all the players, and it's killing. So as long as it's fun and I can handle it, then, I'll keep up with it as long as I can. And then, when I get to that point that I've had enough, then I'll say something. But
yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of how that came out.
It's great memories. Big Fish happened, and then there was kind of an offshoot band that I had a lot of the same players. That was Home Cooking, right? A lot of great players in Vegas, and big group. How big was the group?
10-piece. We had 5 horns, and
Fun. So fun. So I got to see you guys live a few times. I'd moved out of town by then, but when I was back there living and playing with Tom Jones, then I'd find out where you guys were playing and stuff. And so then you guys had how many CDs with that group?
We did 2 albums, and we really pushed hard back then. This was at the late 90s then. This would have been after, I left Big Fish. But this was a band we only played out once in a while, but when we did, we packed any room we played. And, talking like, 500 people, a night would come and see us, and we were probably, I think one of one of the first bands, if not the first band, with only original material to be able to play Las Vegas casinos. Because that was sort of unheard of at that time, unless you were some sort of headline act. But as it turned out, we just happened to have that following, so we were getting called to play Fremont Street or the Riviera or MGM or station casinos, and that was really cool because we got to make some decent money, like just doing our own stuff. And in the meantime, we were pushing our agenda of trying to see if we could get signed or see if we could spread out our regional reach. We were touring up in West Coast, California, Arizona, stuff like that, just trying to see if we could pick up some momentum. Unfortunately, we just kind of hit a ceiling, and after doing so much of that work and touring on our own and running everything ourselves and selling on our own albums, we just couldn't get the right deal that was offered that would make sense for a 10-piece band to leave everything behind and try to shoot for the stars. It was tough.
And that is so inspirational, and it's hard to keep something like that going. And I started my band DKO in 2001, and same thing. It's hard to play the clubs and make enough money, so then you play weddings and do that, play original music, play some covers, and get it all going. That's why when you find these bands like Snarky Puppy, it's really inspirational that they push through, and everybody made such sacrifices to be able to go on tour and do these gigs all over the world and keep it together and keep creating great music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a challenge, but it's also a labor of love, and so you really have to be willing to do it as to the best of your ability, with the thought of no reward at the end of it ultimately. And it's just like, okay, I have this expression I need to get out, and just make it happen, and I'll pull together whatever I need to, and I'll finance whatever I need to. If you're that passionate about it and you believe in it that much, then you have to be willing to make those kinds of sacrifices in order to get it off the ground, and and take it as far as you can to eventually get some sort of reward for it. But you have to know that it's going to take you some time to get there.
And let's clarify, yes, the reward is the music and the camaraderie that you have with the other musicians, and you're all creating something. That is awesome. But the continual sort of barrier seems to be, can you make a living by doing that? And it's this oxymoron, right, of saying you love it, and in order for it to be great, you have to spend all your time doing it. So you can't be doing a day job like you were saying you were doing. And have you, after all these years, have you had any enlightening thoughts that you can share with all of us, including myself?
With regard to just how to balance that, is that what you're kind of saying?
How or why is it seem to be less common for musicians to have a really great band, to write really great music, to record a great CD, and still not be able to make a living at it?
Yeah, that's the trick. Really, it comes down to who are you involving as your team, because it's not enough to just have a band. You have to have people that can represent that band, whether it's management or an agency or a promoter, even a publicist. And so depending on what your goal is, first you have to set your goal. You have to say, this is what I want to achieve, right? Make that an outline, like write it down, just make it an affirmation, like this is the goal. And so now what are the steps you need to take to get to that goal? Okay, I've written songs, check. I've recorded something, check. I've played around town, check. What's next? Well, how do I get to this goal? So if it's a different world today too, that's the other kind of juxtaposition of this. When we were coming up, you and I, in that era, the 90s, that was the era of the CD was still prominent.
Yeah.
We didn't have, the internet was just brand new, and you didn't have streaming, you didn't have MP3s, coming into effect yet. So you could still sell music, you could still be a viable live act and promote yourself and have merchandise and be able to at least at a low level still do okay. And now that's just all out the window, and there is an oversaturation of content being uploaded constantly to everywhere. This goes for all media, music, movies, video games, you name it. It's a free for all now. Everybody can upload anything they want and do their own thing to whatever capacity. But so now it comes down to marketing. How do you get noticed? How do you stand out in that sea of craziness? And that's really the smaller goal that you have to shoot for now is, okay, what is my audience? What is the niche I'm going for? Who is the target? And I need to focus really hard on that. And that starts with just your basic friends and family and whatever audience that on a small scale that you may already have. Keep catering to that and expand that. And even if it's a slow, gradual thing, that has to really be your primary focus, because if you try to reach too far, you're just going to get lost in the sea.
That's well said. Hey, that deserves this words of wisdom from someone in the trenches doing it. Nice job. I want to play a little bit of this awesome track that you had me record a trombone solo on years ago. And was this band Face the Funk an offshoot of Home Cookin' then?
Not necessarily. It was basically an offshoot of, I had finished Home Cookin', and I had been developing some ideas on my own, kind of in the midst of that, because I wanted to try to find my own voice in funk music because I love it so much. And I experimented with a lot of different types of tunes, and I'd found that through that growing process, I had called myself out basically on trying to imitate different artists a little bit too closely. And so I ended up just leaving all of those demos kind of to the side. And then once I figured out what my voice was and where I was coming from, I pushed that forward. And even though this song that you're talking about is one of the first ones that I kind of wrote in finding my own voice, at the time I was utilizing, actually a lot of the players from the Big Fish, so we had, yourself, Phil, had, Nate Wingfield, and had Walter Jones, and so that, and even had Princetta singing with me on some backups on that.
Nice.
And
yeah.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And so even though it's one of the older tracks I've had laying around, I sat on it for a while because I wanted to do a really cool horn arrangement on it to kind of intro the tune. And I didn't figure out what that was until, 15 years later.
Everything, it's like a fine wine, right? It just must age, and then you go, oh yeah, I forgot I had that in the cellar. Let me go dust it off. And so I was so happy when you sent it to me a few years ago and said, hey man, I released this thing finally. And then I kind of remembered some of the solo and stuff, because did we record it right there where you're sitting?
Not here, but in my previous studio.
Yeah. Because that was in the early 2000s, or when was it?
Yeah, I think that was early 2000s, and I had a converted garage at that time that I turned into a studio.
Yeah, and, it worked great. So everyone, check out some of this. This is such a fun tune. It's called "Call My Name." Frank wrote it, and Frank, what are you doing? You're playing drums. You're singing, and what else?
Yeah, playing drums, singing. I'm playing some keys on it, and that was primarily what I did on that. And like I said, I've got all the other cats playing the other instruments. Yeah.
So here's the chorus into the bone solo, and then I end up trading with Phil Wigfall, one of my good friends and one of the best sax players you'll ever hear. So enjoy this. Here we go. Call My Name.
You got the feeling, it's all the same. I'm here to stay and to play the game. Now, ain't got to worry about anything. Baby, just call my name.
This is why we connected back in the mid '90s. It's like there's nothing like funk.
There is nothing like it, man. When it's legit, you know what I mean, and it comes from the place where you know it's authentic and originates from. That's all the artists that started it are the ones that inspire me, in that genre.
What do you mean by that when you're saying it's legit or it's the real deal?
Well, I mean, like, all I did was listen to James Brown and Sly the Family Stone and P-Funk, Earth, Wind and Fire, Tower of Power, Stevie Wonder, the Meters. All of that stuff, is what really spoke to me the most. And so I just try to throw all that in the same, filter of mine and put out something that I'm feeling in relation to it.
What is the difference to you between rock drumming and funk drumming?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. They share something in common, which is that it requires groove, no matter what genre. It requires the feel. And actually, a lot of rock drummers come from funk or R&B, like Dave Grohl or John Bonham. Dude, I'm sorry, John Bonham is a funk drummer. Listen to that groove. It's got so much fat pocket in it, even though it's hard hitting and aggressive and, yeah, it's rocking, but, the groove behind it really, Tommy Lee, same thing, man, Motley Crue. There's groove behind that. So if you apply that to anything you're doing, then it's going to work no matter what. Funk drumming, though, like in some aspects can be more subtle and require more finesse depending on, what group it is or what the vibe of the tune is, like Tower Power, for example. I had the fortunate opportunity to play a show on the same bill with them. It was Family Stone and Tower Power. We played in Detroit together end of last year. And so I got to meet Dave Garibaldi, who's one of my drum heroes as well. And he is just all finesse. That guy everything he does is effortless. And he's not having to do anything like overbearing or over the top. He's there. He's in the pocket. All of the syncopation that he is known for is just coming across like it's butter, and I love that. And I'm just like, okay, so this is an example of how you can just be super funky and be all finesse. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be showy. Just just bring that to the music and it will shine just as much. So, and that's where having style comes into play and having your own personality interjected into what you're playing. For me, I happen to be more of an aggressive player in general because I come from the rock background and I apply that to funk and vice versa. I know when to back off and I know when to rise back up again. So, and that comes from just having a composer's mind too, and understanding what the music needs as a service rather than what I need to show everybody.
That's so right, man. And I love playing with composer arranger types, because everyone is a better listener when you have written a tune and or recorded a tune, because you're listening to all the elements. So you're not just a customer in the restaurant eating the meal. You've had to make the meal, so you know more about the details. But don't you think in general then, on a real basic level, that rock is basically quarter notes and eighth notes, and funk is more about 16th notes and the subtleties of that syncopation?
There can be more subdividing in funk for sure, because everything is based on rhythm. And it goes back to James Brown, the originator, where he basically said, okay, every instrument in this band is the drummer, you know? And so everything has a rhythmic syncopation thing that works together because they're all playing in different spots of the rhythm. So even though the drummer's holding down like a cool funky beat, the horns are playing syncopated in subdivision off of that. The bassist, the guitar player, everybody's doing that in their own spot, in their own place to play. And that's what makes it funky is the syncopation. And then of course coming back to the one, that was his big thing. He's totally like, fill this space however you like, hit me on one.
Yeah.
Interesting note about the this trade-off solo between you and Phil. It was really an idea that I picked up from you to begin with, because you guys used to do that in the Big Fish when we get off on some different solo sections, and you guys would have this open solo section where you guys would basically be like trading and battling out, you know. And I thought that was the coolest thing. So I wanted to try to capture that also, that vibe onto one of my tunes as well.
And yeah, and I'm so glad you asked us to do it, because there's not really any recordings of Big Fish out there, and their videos were way less common. You know, you can't just hold up your phone and do it. So, and we did a demo, a really nice demo of a few tunes, but it was when the band first started and you weren't on it.
Right.
So I was glad to go, man, let's play this tune, because it captures that spirit. I mean, can you imagine playing this stuff 6 nights a week? Midnight, you know, and just like rocking out. That stuff is so fun. And one thing I like about that you mentioned is that you're on the band. It's because you knew some people. We were looking for somebody. It worked out. And then you're on the band. You're absorbed in it every night, and then you learn things musically, and then it carries over into your own project. And then you mentioned this band, one of the bands you listened to as a kid growing up the whole time, the Family Stone, and then next thing you know, you're playing with them.
Yeah, that was a dream come true for me. And it's really kind of a fun full circle journey story. So if you allow me to tell that, I'll try to keep it short. But
please.
But basically, it starts. You know, I was mainly into rock when in my early years as a drummer. Like when I was a kid, I started when I was 8. I was playing professionally by the time I was 11, and you know, mostly with my parents and whatnot. They were playing in casinos around town, and so I got my start doing that. But I was really into my own personal taste. I was into rock. I was trying to aspire to like the Police and Rush and you know, Van Halen and stuff like that. You know, I was really into. Then, so by the time I was about 12, I watched the movie Woodstock for the first time, which is the 1969 famous concert, you know, documentary film. And I went into that thinking, oh, I really want to see Hendrix and Santana and The Who and bands like that. And little did I know, Sly the Family Stone would just blow my mind when I saw their segment of the concert, because they took 400,000 people and just lifted them up in the middle of the morning like no other band I've ever seen do. And the music was just electrifying anyway. And I love the makeup of the band. They had horns, they had, you know, multiple singers, and, you know, the songs kind of hybridized funk and R&B and rock all together a bit. And it was really something special to me, and it spoke to me. And I said, that's what I want to do someday, right there. And that's what started my journey into funk and really wanting to learn all about it. So fast forward to years later, when I'm in Home Cooking, who you mentioned earlier, in the late 90s, there, at the same time, the internet was a newer thing. There was a Sly the Family Stone fan site that was put up, and it was kind of explaining what certain members of the band were up to lately. And I was thinking, oh, this is fun to follow, you know. And then they had an opportunity to send an email as a happy birthday to Jerry Martini, who's the original sax player in the band. And I said, okay, well, what the heck, you know, I'll just write something, and, you know, who knows what'll happen. So I wrote him an email and wished him happy birthday, hoped he was still playing and doing well, and told him I was in a funk band that was directly an inspiration from, you know, being inspired by the Family Stone and having the horns and all that. And, and that was it. I didn't expect to hear anything back. So he did email me back personally to thank me and said, hey, I'd love to hear what your band sounds like. Send me a disc. So I was like, okay. You know, so now not only am I talking to one of my heroes, but I get to send him, you know, an album that I've done, you know, so that's pretty cool. So he listens to it and he loves it. And that kind of kicked off a friendship between us. And we just stayed in touch for several years. And then he, you know, started up the Family Stone touring again. And so he'd invite me out to the show and hang out, and I'd, you know, meet some of the band members, and that was really fun. And that was enough for me, honestly. And then about 2008, I get a call from him, you know, saying that, you know, some member changes had happened, and he was inviting me to, at that point, to be their new drummer. The original drummer was on hiatus, and so he had a hired gun for a little while up until that point. And, you know, so in making some changes, I got offered the spot, and So that was just like, okay. And I still got my full-time video game day job at this point. So I'm like, how does this work with your touring? Because I got this to deal with too. And he's like, well, we mainly tour on weekends. He's like, so if you can take a day here and there, we'll be fine. So I cleared that with my company, and I started touring with them for a few years, and that was a blast. And so then, then after a while, the original drummer returned. So then I became a sub, and was just kind of filling in for when he needed me. And then, as of a couple of years ago, he went back on hiatus. So then I was invited to come back. And last year we played the 50th anniversary of Woodstock at the original site. So taking it from the moment that sparked my interest and goals to come full circle and perform for the anniversary of the event, that says it all, and I love it.
That is awesome, man. This is what Sonic Tonic is all about. I mean, what a cool thing, and that's really going with your gut, with your passion, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, but here's the sort of, when people ask me, like, how do you get to that point? What's the steps you need to take? And I'm like, there's no real steps to take. It's about relationships. It's about being genuine. It's about just being who you are, offering that to whoever's willing to listen or take it on or appreciate it. But the friendships and the relationships that you form over time out of simple, genuine interest and common interests that you have, that's what leads to other opportunities. And you'll never know when they're going to happen. They just sort of magically do one day. I would have never expected to get that call, but I did. And that was because I had a relationship with Jerry up until that point. And that was like a good 10 years, So, I mean, that's it takes just the passion behind what you're doing, and keep doing it, and keep your friendships and relationships going, because you genuinely care about these people, and you love what they do, and they appreciate what you do, and eventually it clicks.
Yes, I noticed two things in that story, though, that's worth pointing out, I think, because if that's what people are listening to here, is trying to pick up, and I hope the viewers are trying to pick up these gems, and it's not about listening to the show and then going, that was kind of entertaining, that was neat. No, hopefully there's little tidbits in every show. Anything you're doing, be mindful about them and start to change your life and take them to improve things. And so what I'm hearing you say when you mention that is, you put yourself out there to reach out to Jerry through the internet. People might think that, and then they don't. So why did you do that?
I did that because for no other reason that I wanted to let him know that I was a huge fan, and that what he did specifically inspired me to do what I'm doing at that time. And that, that was something that was important to me. So, but I had no expectation that he would even write me back. So just the fact that I sent that out there, and that he might get that and read that and maybe get a kick out of it, that was enough for me.
Yes, and I love the fact of that is that you're being a giver. You're not taking. You're just saying, man, you gave me inspiration. I'm giving you thanks for that. That's it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, most of the time, someone's going to appreciate that, and maybe even reach out, and you just are friends then, And the second thing that I find very interesting is that we might go, okay, you were in Big Fish. We're working our butts off 6 nights a week, not making that much money, really working hard. I mean, this stuff is challenging, man. And as a drummer, so much physical with my chops, I mean, we were hurting.
I know.
So, but you improve, you learn things, you get better. So then you did home cooking, and you guys scrape together money. You record the CD and everything. What for? I don't know. There's no finish line for it, but it's because you're passionate. So then you have it sitting there, and then he says, oh, really? You have a band? Send me a recording. Most people won't even have a recording. So you actually had this great package thing sounding awesome. You send it. That makes an impression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So each thing is a building block for the next. And so it's a nice inspiration. Hopefully people can take that away from this and go, everything has validity, right?
Yeah, it does. One of my favorite sayings, as far as like from the perspective of giving advice to how to be successful, is from actually the comedian Steve Martin.
Never
And,
heard of him.
Yeah.
What a jerk.
Rim shot. But he said that just be so good that you can't be ignored. That was his advice. He says, and people don't like to hear that because it implies they actually have to work at something. But it's true. If you put in the work to be as good as you can be and just get out there and do it, eventually someone's going to take notice. But you have to put in the work, and you have to get out there and showcase that in some way. And that's part of it too. Jerry could easily listen to my CD and not like it and say, okay, well, I'm just not going to say anything. And, all right, kid, keep going. But, he actually really did like it. And that's because we really did put in the work to be as good as we could be as that type of band at the time.
So we're going to have Frank. He played on a DKO song of mine where he recorded a new video just a couple of days ago. You're listening to Las Vegas drummer Frank Klepacki playing on my tune I wrote for the DKO Electric Quartet called Oban-Wan Kenobi. And if you've been enjoying the show and all that Frank has to offer as a musician and composer, please consider donating a few bucks. We can help him out and compensate him for spending his time with us here today. Thanks so much. But I really want to get to this fact that he's a unique person, not just being a drummer and a singer and a composer, but actually has had this job that he's referred to several times over many years of working for video game companies and writing the music for the actual video games that you play. When you're hearing the music change from scene to scene and do all these things, some of that music is written by Frank. So here's a little sampler of that. listening to Frank Klepacki, composer, producer, drummer, who wrote all those songs for video games, and we're so excited to have him here on Sonic Tonic Experience. My name is Darren Kramer. Frank, tell us a little bit how you got into this and what mindset you have to be in order to create music like this.
So I got into this pretty young as well. I had found out about a company called Westwood Studios when I was in high school. My cousin was the co-founder, Lewis Castle, and I was looking for a part-time job over the summer, between my junior and senior year in high school. So he kind of gave me the idea of, hey, why don't you apply to be a tester at Westwood, and I'm like, what's that? And he says, well, you just basically play video games, try to break them and report your findings. And then,
Nice.
then we fix what you reported, and then you have to, verify that it was fixed and all that. Okay, cool. That sounds fun. Who wouldn't love to play games, get paid for it, right?
And this is in what city?
Vegas.
Okay.
Vegas. Yeah. I mean, I grew up there. So, anyways, I get in there and I start doing the job, and, little did I know that, it wasn't as quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's not just play the game and, all of that. You really have to go out of your way to break these games. Like, do stuff that doesn't make any sense just for the sake of doing it. Like, what happens if I go to the top left-hand corner of the screen, for no reason? What happens if I try to buy this building and not this one? What happens if I get this tank and attack specifically this thing? Does anything happen? Anything strange? Do I get a glitch graphically? Do I hear anything that's wrong? Do I, does it crash, for no reason? You got to find ways to break it. And then report these findings, what we call bugs. You submit that. The programmers will look at that, try to reproduce it, fix it. Once they feel they have, then they send it back and say, okay, we think we fixed it. Can you verify that? And then we try to do the same thing again. Okay, yeah, it doesn't crash anymore. Great, it's fixed. So rinse, repeat every day of that. So I had a tendency to wander around a bit, a little bit more than I should have, just to, because I was actually genuinely intrigued by what it took to make video games. Like, it was like being behind the scenes of a movie set for me. I wanted to find out how does games get made? Because I love games so much. This is fun. See how artists are creating stuff and how designers are coming up with ways to play it, and the programmers are, how are they solving issues and all of these kinds of things. Well, then that led me to audio. And I met the audio director, and so because I was already a player, drummer, he was also a bassist, and so they had like kind of a side band they were doing, and they invited me to come jam with them, and so I did that for a bit, and that was kind of fun. And so, needless to say, my career as a tester didn't pan out quite well, but after I graduated high school, I had hit him up again, the audio director, and I said, hey, if you need an intern or help after I get out of school, I'd love to, do whatever I can to help out, in the audio, and let me know. And so he's like, all right, And at that point, I was composing my own music. So I had a 4-track at home. I had a guitar and a keyboard, and I was just messing around and writing my own stuff. And so he listened to my demo, and he liked what he heard enough to give me a shot to see if I could dive into what they were doing. So he gave me some tests and some different programs to see how quickly I could learn them and navigate my way around. And eventually, I started just being the full-time composer. After a few months of proving myself. So that's a very unique situation. I don't know that would necessarily happen today, because back then we're talking about the old Nintendo Entertainment System as the bar to hit. You know what I mean? So we talk about stripping things down again to its bare elements, like we're talking about the drinks earlier, right? It's the same thing. I've got a melody, a bass line, a harmony, and a rhythm, and that's all I've got, monophonically to work with. That'd be like saying, "Hey, Darren, write me a piece with a flute, a clarinet, a bass, and a snare drum. Go." And I had to do that for the NES. And but things progressively over time, had evolved. Technology was rapidly increasing. So we went from that to Sega Genesis, to Super Nintendo, the PC, and the audio cards, had better and bigger capabilities. So by the time we get into the mid-90s, now we can do streaming audio. Now we can actually record it and put it in the game the way it's supposed to sound, the way we recorded it. And it's gone up and up since then. Now we're using full orchestras, for the last couple of decades. So it's it's been a real journey. In fact, that was my college, if you want to think of it that way. You know, what you would have to go to college for now to get enough skill set in order to pull off what's necessary, I actually had the unique opportunity to grow with that industry as it evolved.
That's, yeah, and timing does matter, right? Timing and luck do exist. And
Yeah.
you hear Steve Martin talk about that too, you know. I mean, so there is a certain thing, but you have to be prepared as well, and be eager and put in the action, and put yourself out there. You mentioned orchestra. So yeah, that's the Budapest Orchestra that recorded that second tune that we were listening to.
The War is Evolving, yeah. So that was for a game called Grey Goo that I'd done with Petroglyph. It's a company that I've been with for the last 14 years. And it was a real-time strategy game, sci-fi, but, you know, had a really good budget to work with. And so we were able to make something of high quality and a deep story rich game as well. So we had like full motion CG animated cutscenes and that, you know, progress the story along in between your missions. And so we had the budget for an orchestra, which is nice when that happens. And so then I flew over to Budapest, worked with an arranger there from Germany, actually, who met me there. And then we both were sitting in on the session. I could have conducted if I wanted, but I preferred to sit in the booth and really listen for what's happening so that I can, you know, we can correct any spaces in the music that, you know, any sections of bars or whatever that are required. Anyhow, that was a fun experience. Had a great sounding room, great players. Really, I love the fact that the Budapest Orchestra does not fear triple forte. they'll get in there and just dig in, and the brass especially is just like, I'm like, yes. So it's no
cool.
feeling like that.
When you recorded it, I mean, wrote for it, did you mock it up and use all synth stuff at home just so you knew what it was going to happen?
Yeah, I did. I do that for all my scores. I do mock-ups for everything because it's never apparent right up front whether or not the budget for an orchestra will be there. So it's only once in a while that happens, and so I have to, you know, really just proceed with the idea that, okay, I need to make this sound as good as I can on my own first, and then if that budget gets approved, great, then I can, you know, get it arranged and taken care of. But if not, then at least I know what I have will still work.
Nice. And they have done that in the past where you've just used your mock-up?
Yeah. In fact, the Star Wars tune, Rebellion Advantage, that was done as a mock-up. So that was me doing a simulated orchestra on that and just trying to match it to sound tonally like what the film recordings did.
Yes. And that is a challenge. And what's the number one thing you find to be the difference between live versus MIDI?
Wow. It's really about the expression, the dynamics, how that really sounds when it's played by human beings. There is nothing that can simulate that. There just isn't. You can get close, but, you know, there's something to be said for the human element that really makes it just have that organic feel. I mean, music is emotion. It is feeling. And so because of that, you really want the end result as much as possible to connect with whoever's playing it that way, whoever's listening to it that way.
Yeah, and I'm about to do a masterclass on Zoom for ASMAC, which is the Society for Music Arrangers and Composers, and that's one of the main things we talk about, especially arranging for horn section. A lot of people will just use MIDI horns versus real horns, and the sound difference is just astonishing. I mean, you can't really simulate it, and it's because of the waveform that actually is coming out of a saxophone or a trombone. Those two in particular. Trumpet, you can kind of hide in there a little bit because it's an octave higher. I don't know what exactly it is about the physics of it, but trombone and sax, you can just hear right away and go, there's a stuffiness, a dead kind of stiffness to it. And so it's really neat to hear MIDI horns, and then you hear live horns and go, yeah. And then you've mentioned it too, Frank. You're like, a funk band isn't a funk band if it doesn't have horns, you know?
Yeah.
There's a power to that air moving through the horns and going out into the air, you know?
Yeah, and I really was obsessed with horn sections from an early age too, just from that very connection. And anytime I had the chance to play live where there was horns, I just enjoyed it that much more, because it was like it's like having two bands on stage. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's like you got this powerhouse horn section, and then you got the rhythm section, like, killing it, and both things together, just, that right combination. And if the sound's good on stage, it's just everybody feels that, and that translates to an audience versus just a few guys getting up there in t-shirts and jeans and just, trudging away. Like there's more energy there, and it's infectious.
You have so many skills as a musician, and kudos to you.
Thanks. Well, I mean, a lot of that, has evolved over time. And I think that, the modern day musician for today, even if you're getting started, you need to start thinking ahead already about how playing an instrument is not enough anymore, about how having an understanding of recording is important, because especially right now, I mean, we're in the middle of this COVID thing. Everybody's staying home. There's no live entertainment for the foreseeable future until things clear up. And so we have to rely on other means of, being able to work and or express ourselves. And the one way we can do that is to record ourselves and collaborate with people. And you have to really, get your mind thinking about, how can I at least get a foundational setup that will work professionally for people, so I can record tracks remotely, so I can play to a click, so I can video myself, so I can be part of other video compilation projects, and have these other forms of what we do in place to move forward with.
It's so right. I mean, whoever's listening out there, you need to take this to heart, because if you are just playing out live gigs, we know that's been waning now. So it's really important to be able to record your sound quality, but then also video yourself. And those can be two separate endeavors. And so it doesn't matter what the digital audio workstation is. I'm an Ableton guy. I'm an Ableton certified trainer. This speaks to me for live performance and recording and creating ideas. But Frank, he uses Cubase, and it doesn't matter. It's like whatever car you enjoy driving. It'll get you to that place, but you have to have a car.
Exactly.
And speaking of like modern technology and all, I want to play a little piece of a bit of Frank's latest release, which is super cool with all these sounds and really aggressive groove, and it really speaks to me as an electronic music lover. So listen to a little of this. So Frank, when you're composing a piece like this, what element are you doing first?
A lot of this comes just from different instrument patches that I've dialed up, and I'll do a riff on one and a riff on another and a riff on another, and then I'll start kind of playing arranger at that point. And then once I get like a rhythm in place, or like the punch or the vibe I want, then maybe I'll feel like picking up the guitar and adding some rock elements to that.
So those were real guitars, right?
Yeah, I played the guitar on that. Everything else is synthesized, but
like that's real.
This is one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
stuff like that. That's like more sound design elements, that I kind of picked up from a lot of EDM, dubstep kind of, programmed sounding tracks that I've heard that I liked. But with a lot of electronic music, and you can probably relate to this, with your musical background too, of course, is that as composers and people that play live and have an understanding of how, real instruments should work, if you apply that to electronic music, it creates its own vibe that is different from the average programmer electronic artist. You know what I mean? Like anybody can get behind a laptop and some software and some plugins and make some electronic music, that's on a basic level, or a very creative programmed level where it's more about the sound and the way that it moves and changes. But in this case, I'm applying real musicianship to an electronic piece and applying the sound design and programming.
Yeah, I mean, but just like this, where that groove totally changes, to me, that's always a more musical element.
Yeah.
And instead of just going with the same thing for 6 minutes.
Yeah,
So that's coming from your drummer background and loving different grooves and really kind of wanting to do something a little unique.
Yeah, absolutely. But just, wanting to do something different with the genres and or tools that are available that people might be familiar with that are cool in their own right, but haven't been applied in maybe this way yet. Yeah. And that's kind of the angle that I go with, combining hybridizing electronic with rock music and with real instrumentation, but also clever sound design and just arrangement sake from a composer's state of mind rather than a just standard electronic programming state of mind.
That's so right. That's exactly where I'm coming from with my electric trombone DJ and my electro horns, trying to use a live horn section incorporated with Ableton with all these modern sounds, but this traditional kind of horn section thing, arrange that out, be real funky like Tower of Power, Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago, that kind of real forward, heavy, leading horn sound, but on top of all of this, just awesome drum grooves and stuff. And I mean, this music's a blast, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's so much out there. And just about everything's been done to a degree now. So it's really about finding your voice, going back to that, and finding a clever way to incorporate that into, what speaks to you. And if that means crossing some boundaries and shifting some genres together or just being a clever arranger even. I mean, all of that can be what your thing is, and then you can take that and run with it. And that's what people will recognize. Like that's, for me, a lot of people associate me with the Command and Conquer video game franchise because I've composed the majority of those games. And that's what a lot of people, enjoyed musically from what I've done since my early years. And a lot of that was very much in that vein. It was the combination of all of these different genres of music that were allowed to exist in a video game. And that kind of hadn't been done at that point to the degree that I pushed it. So, and I was just allowed to be creative. That's another thing I need to attribute this to. The producers and designers of the game, and my audio director encouraged me to be creative and try a lot of things to see what could stick and what maybe wouldn't. But in the end of the day, they were like, you know what, this variety is actually kind of cool. Why don't we just go with that?
So the leadership matters.
Yeah, it does. So if you're allowed to kind of, try a lot of different things for the sake of seeing what will work, you might be surprised that a lot of it could work, and that's really the point.
It's great advice. Everybody, if you're interested in what you've been hearing from Frank, both of him speaking and from his music, make sure you go to his website, frankklepacki.com. Super impressive website, man, which is no surprise once you've heard the quality of all the things he's talking about, all the stuff Frank's done and his music. It's like you need this whole package. So if you want to see how to do a website right, go check that out. He's in all these bands, all these different projects, and it's organized really clearly. You can buy stuff right off of his website. Lots of videos, lots of MP3s, and it's really cool. And so and also consider throwing a few extra bucks to Frank. If you're enjoying this show, I always pass off all the tips to our guests. So feel free to just submit any a dollar. No amount is too small, and it all helps us keep creating music and putting quality content out in the world. So thanks for being here, Frank.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Darren. And real quick, I gotta give some credit where credit's due. My website, and talking about building a team again that we talked about earlier. I had somebody who was passionate about what I did and became friends with, and happened to be a great web designer, and so he helped me create that. His name is Aiden Ashuri, and also a musician, fantastic pianist and composer in his own right too. So there you go. You meet people along the way that appreciate what you do, and you exchange information, you keep in touch, and eventually end up working together in some capacity.
I love it. Thanks for the shout out for him. That's very kind. We're all on this path together, and let's combine and collaborate and be friends. All this fighting that's going on in the world, that's not really necessary.
No, we need to be championing each other,
Yeah.
in each other's goals and support, and just even if it's just lending an ear or offering any kind of tidbit of advice. All of that stuff does account for something, no matter how little it is. And there's been so many things and anecdotes and experiences that I've taken over the years that I've been able to apply to what I do now. Meeting you all those years ago and working with you, I learned things from you that I carry with me to this day as well, Darren. So I thank you, of course, for that, whether you realized it or not.
No, but I remember us just speaking on the same level, and you were all eager and putting in the work to want to make these songs right. And I was, I know I was fairly demanding about it, and I was the MD for the band, and I just wanted to be cool. And there's a lot of details in a great funk band. And,
yeah. And one of the things that you said that stuck with me all these years was that a solo isn't just a guy getting out there and playing over what the band's doing. A solo is a musical conversation, and you should actually interject into that conversation to accent and give it some back and forth, and so I took that to heart, and anytime you guys were going off and doing solos in the horns, or anybody for that matter, I would find ways to kind of throw in things in between what you were doing, or to accent with what you were doing if I felt where it was going, and that really did make a difference in the presentation of what we were doing and the excitement around what we were doing. And
excitement is so right. And even to this day, when I go and hear, there's a lot of bad jazz out there, so I get why people don't like it. When it's really great, there's nothing better than jazz. But what is the difference? It's the communication. It's not just regurgitating your solo, your ideas over what's happening in the background. You're all communicating, and there's an energy that's happening. It's like somebody just talking and kind of lecturing a group of people. That's not fun,
Yeah, exactly.
And we got to give a shout out to several people. Phil Wigfall, sax player that was in the Big Fish Horns and still doing it heavy in Vegas. And then the trumpet player was my good friend Greg Neer, who had just moved to town and was playing a lot of Dixieland jazz in the day. And then we were doing Big Fish at night, funk, and then sometimes we'd even be doing salsa gigs too. Wow. Greg Neer was a big part of that, and we really had a nice synergy between the three-piece horn section and then interacting with the rhythm section. Who, the guitar player, was Nate Wingfield, who then you ended up playing with on the Family Stone with him too, right?
Yeah, and that's another quick anecdote too, is that when we met that first day that I played the gig with you guys, it was on a break. I went to go get some food, and Nate came with me, and so we just got to chat, and we asked each other, so who's your favorite band? Both of us said Sly The Family Stone. And then and then 10 years later, we're playing in that band together. Unreal.
Aim high, right? Set your goals high. So hopefully all your words of wisdom and this fun conversation can help people out there. Again, if you're interested in getting in touch with Frank Klepacki, or buying any of the music that you've been hearing here, or playing the video games that he wrote music for, just go to frankklepacki.com. He lives in Las Vegas. And we got to wrap up here. Man, Frank, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're a really busy person, and it's really great to catch up this way and share this with the world. So
Yeah, man,
hopefully,
absolutely.
as soon as they start opening things up a little more, we should definitely have one of these vanilla vodka sodas in person in Vegas. So I'll see you soon.
Yes, my friend.
That's right. Good, man. Well, take care of yourself.
You too. Take care.